Hey, today we're going to talk about how to work with influencers to market your book. Nerd Nation. Okay, how to work with influencers to sell your book and market your book. So who am I? I've been writing since 1999. My first book was published in 2009. I write the Nickel Brickleby series and the Acadia series, the Gladiators of the Namatjia and 7 Days, and a lot of other books. So here's the core truth with reference to influencers. Everyone tells you to get influencers to promote your book. What they don't tell you is that you're not the one with the power in that relationship. They are. And if you don't understand that going in, you'll waste time, money, and burn bridges you didn't even know you were building, right? So here is a fundamental difference between working with an influencer as well as a traditional ad. Traditional ad, you pay, you control the message, and the results is relatively predictable. Typically, the results won't be nearly as impactful as an influencer, but here is the influencer deal. You ask them to stake their reputation on your book. This is a completely different ask, right? And it's fundamentally different. All right. So let's talk about the influencer world. It is a very difficult and hard job, what authors rarely consider before reaching out. They ride waves. Influencers survive by spotting trends early and exiting them before they crash. They're always hunting the next big thing, right? So they are looking for those trends that they can hop on early, and then let's say it's a book talker, they read the book that everyone's talking about, and then they're able to output their opinion on it and whatnot. But the job is much harder than it looks. Only 15% of creators make over 100,000. 69% earn under 50,000. And that space is getting increasingly more crowded every day. About 17,000 new influencers enter the space every single day. What is their currency? Legitimacy. A book talker with 200 followers who recommends something their audience hates doesn't just lose a deal, they lose years of trust. Legitimacy and authenticity to an influencer is absolutely everything. So the balance versus the payout. Influencers get paid regardless of your sales. So if you do a paid collaboration with them, they're going to get paid whether you sell 1,000,000 copies or you sell 10. So if their audience isn't responding, they'll side with their audience every time. And that is a sign of a good influencer, right? They are going to know what the market can take. They can know the books that they can engage with that are going to have good audience engagement, right? And that's what separates book talkers that are exceptionally successful and those that are less successful. What this means for you. Your book needs to be genuinely good. There is no amount of marketing money fixes a weak product in the influencer space. If your book is not top notch, especially now, it is hyper competitive. And we've been talking about this for several episodes now. Most influencers just aren't going to touch it. If it's not ready to go to the market and not a polished product and not just compelling and exciting, honestly, you don't want influencers to read it at that point because it just is not going to go well. There's just not going to be good audience feedback. There isn't going to be good. It's just going to be really rough. It's going to be rough for the influencer, for you, everyone in between. So you got to have the best product you could possibly put together. All right. When an influencer says no, or oftentimes they don't respond to your emails, don't take it personally. They probably get, some influencers get hundreds of emails every day asking for people and individuals to read and rate their book, right? They have to sort through all of these, right? So don't take it personally. They are just trying to do the best they can in their job. But it is a good sign if they respond to you and say no. If, let's say, the paid collaboration was for $10,000 and they end up turning it down, it is a really good sign that they are credible and that they are authentic, right? They don't want to take on projects that they don't believe in. And that is a sign and hallmark of a good influencer. So when they say yes, their audience believes them in a way that they'd never believe a paid ad. authentic enthusiasm from a credible reviewer is much more powerful in the marketing or in the space of book marketing. So here's the smart approach. Ask if they'd be willing to read a few chapters. So let's say you get an influencer that's engaged. They are interested in your book. You presented a couple different comp titles. They love those comp titles. Their audience loves those comp titles. It's not a bad idea to say, do you mind reading a few chapters or listening to a few chapters and seeing if this is a good fit for you, and if it's a good fit for your audience. And if it's something they would typically rate 4 or higher in stars, then it's probably a partnership that is going to make a lot of sense. Because bear in mind too, the influencer, they are staking their reputation on putting these book recommendations out, right? You don't want to put them in a position where they don't like the book that much, right? Or they're going to rate it poorly. So you want to make sure it's going to work for both sides. So bigger is not always better. Match the audience to your book. There's mega influencers, 1 million followers. They typically cost between $5,000 to $50,000 per paid post for a paid collaboration. Incredibly expensive. They a lot of times have much less engagement, right? Which isn't really what you want. You want high engagement. Typically, this is just for major publishers. You got your macro influencers, 100,000 to $1 million. Their posts can cost anywhere between $500, $10,000, depending on how involved their post is or what they have to do, right? Again, now this is for a paid collaboration. You aren't paying them for a positive post. You're paying them, compensating them for their time, right? And that's a completely different situation. You may pay for this paid collaboration. They went into it in good faith, and ultimately something happened in the book where they didn't like it at a certain point, and they're going to rate it what they rated, right? They have to remain true. They have to keep themselves true to who they are as a book reader, and they have to be authentic. This group has 2 to 4% engagement. It's best for mid-range budgets, broad awareness. And here is your micro influencers, 10,000 to 100,000 followers, $100 to $500 per post. And they usually have, because they have a smaller audience, they a lot of times have much more engagement, 5 to 10%. And this is really where you want to be. And I would say for pretty much every author out there that is trying to work with an influencer, because they have less followers, the paid collaborations mean a lot more to them, and they're fairly easy to work with, and they often have a really good and engaged audience. Then you have your nano influencers, 1,000 to 10,000 followers. Oftentimes you can offer a free copy. Honestly, I don't know if that's really the case anymore. Pretty much all of these influencers, these book talkers, even if they have a few hundred followers, they get people contacting them every day in the hundreds, dozens to hundreds of contacts asking them to review and their book and get a free copy, right? I just don't think that that's very effective nowadays. I just think that everyone gets pretty much free copies all the time for all the books. So I don't think it's as effective. They typically have a very high engagement, a few hundred followers, and they're engaged with them on a day-to-day basis. Okay, a micro influencer that engages with 20,000 or 25,000 followers is much better and much more powerful than an influencer that has, let's say, 2 million, and they don't really engage with their followers. So here's a good way to figure out if they have high engagement, right? You need to figure out the influencers that have high engagement. So it's a good match for you and them. So if you take the average likes plus the comments divided by followers, and it's under 2%, it's typically there's less engagement going on there. If it's above 5%, that's pretty good engagement, and that's a good bar to shoot for, right? Here's things to look for: active comment sections, not just great post. They reply to comments in their videos. I've seen some great book talkers that they reply to every single comment. So it's obviously a two-way relationship with the audience. live events, meetups, Q&A sessions. Audience shows up in person. This is a great indication that their followers are genuinely invested in who these influencers are. They have a Patreon or paid community, and this is the hallmark for the ultimate signal of how invested their community is. Because as individuals are paying for the Patreon, they are supporting in a very real sense this influencer, and the influencer is creating a community that has that the followers want to engage in. Right, very positive community. Here's a couple great examples out there. Chris and Mads, two sisters. Their posts are actually hilarious. I love I love the stuff that they put out, and they have some really good funny posts, but also come across very authentic. One thing that I actually really enjoy about them, they're not negative. Even if they don't like a book, it's gonna be like, it's just not for me. It's on my did not finish list. They're not going to completely trash that book, right? Because in all honesty, they might not be the right reader set for it. And so I think they acknowledge that, they respect that. And I'm like, no, I'm going to politely not finish that one, or this is where I ended the series. Alicia Fortune, she also puts out some great stuff out there as well. Good recs, recommendations, and both of these influencers have really good engagement with their followers. Also, I would love to get a free or a copy over to the brothers Gwynn. I think they would absolutely love the Acadia and the audiobook. So if anyone knows them or anything like that, or has a good connect with them, let me know. I'd love to reach out to them. I just think they'd really enjoy that kind of book series. All right, here's some red flags to work with, to look out for with influencers. Now, bear in mind, this just means influencers that might not be the best pick for your book, right? Book talkers. It doesn't mean that they're bad influencers. They just might have a different approach and different angle that makes sense to them. It doesn't mean that their channel's bad, or that that they're putting out bad content. But it's some red flags that will make the partnership less viable, right? So if they promote everything with no selectivity, they only get generic comments, or they only leave generic comments, their audience demo doesn't match your readers, negative audience reactions to their book reviews, right? These are all signs that their audience isn't as engaged. And engagement is what really sells books, right? All right. Before you contact a influencer, do your homework. Never pitch cold. Know everything about them before you write one word. Watch and read their content. Check their platform strength. Know your comp titles, and verify their engagement rate. And we talked about the formula above that you can use, right? You want to do your homework. You want to respect their time. They have a tremendous platform. They've been working on it for several years. So you want to come at them with knowledge of who they are, what they represent, and how best to approach them. Your pitch email must cover these 5 things: who you are, what your book is, why choose them specifically, reference their actual content. They want to make sure this is a good partnership just as much as you want to make sure, right? And if you haven't looked at their stuff and they are nothing but fantasy, and you're pitching a hard-boiled sci-fi book series, obviously that's going to be embarrassing for you. They're not even likely going to respond, but it's just kind of a waste of your time, their time, right? And offer what you're offering. Always offer a free copy and compensation. Typically, like I said, nowadays it's going to be a paid collaboration if you are approaching them. Now, if they find the book organically, obviously they're going to do their thing, and that's great. They can reach out to you, say, hey, I want to do an interview with you. But that's a different situation than we're talking about here. This is where you are reaching out to them specifically to see if they're interested in receiving a copy of your book, reviewing your copy, or reviewing the book on their platform. So give them a clear, simple ask, an invitation, not a demand, right? They pretty much have all the cards in this situation because you are approaching them. Always request their media kit. Now, basically a media kit is their price that they have predetermined that works for them. So it'll be, let's say, for a TikTok post, this much, an Instagram post, this much. And they'll also show the amount of influencers they have, or I'm sorry, amount of followers they have, as well as their engagement level. So here's a real example. I won't dive too much into it. This is kind of what like in a pitch for Acadia would be. Pretty short, sweet. Um, I mentioned that there's a paid feature, complimentary audiobook, or you could say a paid collaboration, right? Just understand that you aren't paying for a review, you're paying to compensate their time, right? For a paid feature. Don't make these mistakes because you will kill that relationship before it starts. Don't DM them on their personal accounts. Don't ask them to buy the book and promise reimbursement. Don't tell them what to say or how to feel about the book. You're paying for their time, not a glowing review, right? If an influencer is going to take what you say and put it in your in their review, like they're just not going to have authentic following, right? So you actually don't want that. Don't follow up more than once if they don't respond, right? Like I said, these book talkers are getting dozens, if not hundreds of pitches every day. Don't offer exposure in lieu of payment. They have an audience, you don't have an audience. Or if you do have an audience, it might not be nearly as big. Obviously, there's a reason that you're reaching out to them and they're not reaching out to you. Don't expect them to hide paid partnership disclosure. If it's a paid partnership disclosure, they have to, at least in the United States, probably ubiquitous, probably all over the world, but they have to legally disclose that. If an influencer isn't, they can get in big trouble, and you don't want that going on. You don't want them to get in trouble, and you also don't want to be involved if they're not posting that. All right, when they're interested, what happens after they say, tell me more? Let them read a few chapters first. I think that's a great approach. So you send a book, audiobook, ebook, physical copy. Make sure it's something that they connect with, that their audience connects with. Send them a signed copy. I always do that. I think it's professional and a nice, and it shows a long-term relationship building. Have a contract ready. If they're a big influencer, they probably already have one that they utilize. Outline the terms of the agreement. Make sure you read it, go through it, and it's fair for both sides. Read the contract carefully. Okay, this is how a typical campaign would go. If I'm trying to recruit some influencers, I'll send out 20 to 30 emails. I get about 10 to 20% who respond, 2 to 6 replies. 50 of the percent of those will want a copy, and then you generally get 3 to 5 influencers that will have agreed to a paid partnership or collaboration, or that they've agreed to just receive a free copy of your book and put it out there. Oh, actually, no, this important line at the bottom. Think of influencers as a shove, not a rocket. You will still have to carry the momentum with additional ads and advertising and some of your platform. All right, so what's the difference between gifted and paid collaboration? You send a free copy, no payment, no guaranteed post. Influencer may or may not review. And paid, you pay an agreed fee, guaranteed post of agreed deliverables, so they will guarantee that they will post. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they will like what they read or the post, right? And you do not want to influence them in that space as well. That is their authenticity, that is their voice. All right, be explicit about what you're offering and legal disclosure requirement. And we already talked about that. If it is paid collaboration, they must and they should, and you should make sure that it's in the contract that they disclose that this is a paid collaboration, or it's marked as gifted, some indication of the situation that you are setting up. All right, and then you need to make sure that you can track these different things. Have a traceable link. So if you're working with multiple influencers at the same time, you'll be able to figure out which partnerships work the best, and or discount codes, and then look at engagement metrics and long-term value. A single micro-influencer post might not move the needle on day one, but it's a permanent piece of content, right? So you're going to get more value out of these as time progresses. All right, here is the only takeaways that matter. Influencers hold the power, respect their legitimacy, or they'll say no, and they should, right? They've worked so hard to build this platform and this audience. Micro beats macro for most authors, match audience and engagement, not follower count, right? So you don't want tons of followers with low engagement. You want just the opposite, high engagement, and it's just fine to have lower amount of followers. A professional pitch, a media kit request, and realistic expectations will take you further than any budget. Okay, that's all I have for you guys today. If you want more, please like, subscribe, check out sterlingnixon.com, check out my merch page. I am still doing a race to 1,000 campaign. I'm trying to get 1,000 additional reviews on Acadia prior to the release of Titan, the second book, which comes out in July 23rd, 2026. It is being narrated right now by Ewan Morton, so super exciting. Got some videos coming out with regards to that. All right, and for the question of the day, what do other authors think about all of this? Am I approaching the influencer space appropriately, or is this good advice? I'd be very curious to see what other authors' experience with working with influencers looks like. So if you're an author, or if you potentially have worked with influencers before in the past, let me know. Or if you're an influencer, I'd love to see what your perspective is on an author's perspective, and certainly open to talking out different things and different points that I made. Love to hear your feedback. Okay, in the next episode, we're going to talk about social media ads, what actually works and what will burn through your money. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys. I thank you so much for taking the time, and I'll talk to you next time.